helplessness is your best friend, savage.
So everyone's freaking out about a video of Anita Sarkeesian saying she is not a fan of video games.
What? I'm awake. Jesus Christ, it was barely 5 seconds and she already was putting me to sleep.
In 2010, saying it's proof she's a scammer.
I'm not a fan of video games. I actually had to learn a lot about video games in the process of making this.
I can think of two reasonable interpretations of this, one favorable and one cynical. I can also think of a third interpretation that is completely unreasonable, and that's the scammer one every online sexist is screaming about.
This is something we're going to touch on in this video, that every person who disagrees with Anita Sarkeesian does so because they're sexist. I don't disagree with Anita Sarkeesian because of her gender. I disagree with her because she is wrong. She lies out of her ass. She's a hypocrite. She's a liar. She's boring. And honestly, I do not see why she needed any money for this product.
It just doesn't hold up under scrutiny. Whatever the case, it's a logical fallacy to consider the value of an argument dependent on the veracity of the person behind it.
If you listen very carefully, you can actually hear the sound of somebody moving the goalpost. It's because, admittedly, every time that a new piece of information, like her background, the fact that she worked for companies that were a bit on the scrupulous side to begin with, or the fact that she stole Let's Play footage without even bothering to credit the person that she took the footage from, or even asking for their permission. And honestly, I brought this up before, but I can record my own footage for my own video games. How else do you explain that I did my LP of Super Ghouls and Ghosts, my LP of Appleseed, my playthrough of Super Earth Defense Force, and a couple other pieces of gameplay footage that I've uploaded onto my channel over the years?
What's going on in the video is Anita lecturing on vidding, the practice of taking existing video content and putting it to existing music to make a point. She describes a political vid she made called Too Many Dicks Video Games, pairing up contemporary video game footage with Flight of the Conchords' Too Many Dicks on the Dance Floor. And
I would also like to point out, she actually found the Too Many Dicks on the Dance Floor music video to be offensive to her. Which, honestly, Flight of the Conchords is a comedy troupe. They're like the Monty Python Flying Circus or any other comedy group you can think of. Which, honestly, proves that Anita Sarkeesian does not understand comedy.
She says that she would play games if they weren't very violent, but she has no interest in blowing people's brains out. She then says explicitly,
I'm not a fan of video games.
Hey, if you listen very carefully right now, you'll be seeing something truly amazing. You'll be seeing somebody moving the goalposts right before your very eyes.
But in an aside way that indicates she's familiar with them and made a judgment. She talks for a bit about why she doesn't like Lara Croft of the Tomb Raider games. It's not a very well crafted argument because she's just rambling the way teachers do. She's saying things as she thinks of them. Reasonable interpretation number 1. She was always a fan to some degree and just misspoke.
You're a fucking moron.
I personally think she got into video games as a kid and kept up with games primarily within the realm of family-friendly games that many wouldn't consider serious games, like Wii Sports. She likely played other games like Tomb Raider just to experience more of the culture. I wouldn't consider myself a movie buff, but I do rent old movies just to familiarize myself with the cultural products. I wouldn't consider myself a fan of Alfred Hitchcock, implying active appreciation, but I have watched a lot of his movies. I can spot homages. Penn Jillette defines atheism as a lack of active belief in God, instead of active belief in a lack of God, and he designates most Americans atheists because of this. Likewise, we can define the state of not a fan as a lack of active appreciation, instead of the presence of active dislike. I think she picks around gaming products to find things she likes and is not a fan of the contemporary products in general, and so declared herself not a fan of video games in a general sense.
Which is my interpretation is that she is a liar, a hypocrite, a boring idiot, a waste of time, energy, and money that could have gone to actually helping people rather than in her back pocket. Heck, it's a noble idea. You know that last princess concept? Why didn't she make that and lead by example? But no, she has to sit at home and complain about things like a hypocrite and a boring fool.
Remember that she was just saying random things, not bothering to phrase them so as to paint an accurate picture as she would in a composed argument. I think she started looking at some contemporary serious games like Bayonetta specifically for critique on feminist frequency, in the way that I would rent certain movies like Transformers to critique on Going Rampant. It doesn't imply a lack of familiarity with the medium in general. Oh, and she totally played Bayonetta. That's what she says on her site, and I believe it.
Bull fucking shit! She never played Bayonetta. If she had, she would have known that the little girl that you say isn't her daughter. It's actually a future version of yourself that happens to be very young, not her daughter. And also, she somehow puts Bayonetta and puts it against how women are being molested on trains, which, if you want to know my general thoughts on a Bayonetta video, go watch my Feminist Frequency versus Bayonetta video. It's one of my most popular videos on my channel.
I tried dry humor myself, with suggesting that in Halo the act of inserting the index into the core sounded sexual. And I got someone rolling their eyes at the crazy feminists seeing sex everywhere. So I can understand the intent to put in humor and then the subsequent backfire. And then people complain that she's so serious and how she really can't expect to hold anyone's interest if she doesn't joke a bit with her audience. She really can't catch a break.
You know what, Mom? You know what I'm gonna get you next Christmas? A big wooden cross. So every time you feel unappreciated for all your sacrifices, you can climb on up and nail yourself to it.
And then at some point, she decides to make a series of videos analyzing the problematic tropes that she sees in the video games around her. Some she hasn't explored, but still visible. I haven't watched a lot of noir, but I know a lot of the basic tropes, just because of pop cultural osmosis. She recognizes that it would be a huge endeavor sucking up most of her time. She can't hold down a job and work on such an ambitious project.
I'm able to produce videos on my channel and still hold down a job. The only problem is that Anita Sarkeesian wants to play the victim, which makes her a fucking hypocrite. Also, explain to me how this video is taking up so much of her time. The only way I can figure out is that she's intentionally stretching it out over a period of time because she's a boring cunt.
So she decides to crowdfund it. She makes a commercial stating that she's a gamer, indicates the game systems and games she owns, simulates gameplay, and sticks within the confines of reasonable commercial development, likely directed to her by the videographer, to produce a pristine ad to really influence people to chip in money. She doesn't literally play because there's no point to play in the creation of an ad, where there would be no focus on specific games, and perhaps a problem with recording a screen in a different frame rate. So much is on her as a subject, who needs to keep herself looking good and in good light. After the massive harassment and subsequent media coverage and funding, she gets to work. We see her at work in a news report. She starts reviewing games online. She takes a lot of screenshots. She makes extremely comprehensive videos.
Oh wait, you serious? Let me laugh even harder.
No, it isn't! This video series is piss poor at the best of times. She lies profusely, makes huge amounts of errors. And if she doesn't, explain to me this then. How come, when she talks about Dinosaur Planet, she edits out and forgets to mention Saber? You know, Crystal's brother, who would later become Saber. Not Crystal becoming Saber, but Saber becoming Fox McCloud from the Star Fox universe, because admittedly they wanted to latch onto a pre-existing product rather than risking a new IP which could fail, because considering they just announced the GameCube at that time. But anyway, I'm rambling a bit. Just go watch my commentary on Anita Sarkeesian's first tropes versus women in video games. I go on and talk about that for some time.
And who might you be, animal girl?
My name is Crystal.
I am Saber, Royal Knight from the planet Animus.
My name is Crystal, and I've come for the princess.
General Scale, ruler, tyrant, and dictator of the Sharpclaw tribe.
Tricky, what's happened?
As she was given money to do. Reasonable interpretation number 2. She played games as a kid, fell out of it for a while, and then got back into it for a video series. It's also reasonable to imagine that she was a Nintendo fan as a kid, but grew out of it. She was aware of video games through pop cultural osmosis, but didn't play them until she specifically got Bayonetta and such to critique on feminist frequency.
She didn't play the fucking game, you fucking moron!
When she made her commercial, she was deliberately misleading to suggest a serious lifelong gaming passion. Now at least she's a gamer who posts game reviews and makes comprehensive videos. But there's still some concern that she's not seeing the big picture because she's still coming in as an outsider and doesn't know the territory very well.